Our speakers for today are Rajeev Chandrasekhar, State President, BJP Kerala, former Minister of Electronics and IT, Government of India, Mr. Vikram Doraiswami, the High Commissioner of India to the UK, and Chauhan, the CEO of UNICC. This panel is being moderated by Mr. Prachetas Bhatnagar, Head of Strategy and Operations at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, London. He's been a former management consultant at McKinsey & Company and started early careers with United Nations. He holds a master's from the London School of Economics, and he's very publicly spirited about AI and tech. We're all looking forward to an enthralling discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful description. Makes me feel very good about myself. So we'll just introduce all the panelists, although they already have been. High Commissioner Vikram Doraiswami, Sameer Chauhan, he is the Director of the UNICC, that's the UN Specialized Agency for Compute, and Rajeev Chandrasekhar, former Minister for IT, Entrepreneurship, Skill Development, and Electronics. Have I missed anything, Rajeev?
That's okay.
Wonderful.
I'm not any of that anymore, so.
Former. Wonderful. So let's set the moment here. See, AI is not just a new technology, it is a new theater of power and a new test of political imagination. So the way we, harnessing, mastering, and understanding this is the new test for us today, and that's the question we ask ourselves, that what's the scale of the opportunity here and how do we begin to make sense of it. So I'll just share one quick fact here. Today, like per day, the average amount of investment that goes in AI per day is $1 billion. That's just one staggering fact, and in rupee terms, that's about 8,500 crores. Today's term. So India, the way India should think about it, and that's just my reflection, is not obviously by outspending, but by outthinking. So we are at Oxford University, where AI, learning, future of work, and imagination converges. So let's put students first and start with you, Rajeev, and we'll all go one by one. So for a student graduating today, what does it really mean to enter the world shaped by AI? And how should you rethink about how we learn differently, how we teach, and the future of work, especially in the context of AI is overestimated today and grossly underestimated tomorrow? So Raji, we'll begin with you.
So thank you for having me here at the Oxford India Forum, and I think, Prachetas, you ask a pretty important question. I think if you just leave the hyperbole of AI aside for a minute and look to the future, it is certainly irrefutable, and there's no argument that's going to be made by anybody that AI is going to change the landscape of what we see as work. AI is changing the landscape of what we understand as innovation. And to answer that question, the best way to answer that question is like to say a generation of students that entered the workforce before compute happened. There was a generation of students that entered the workforce before the internet hit the world. There was a generation of students that went into the workforce after social media and search and indexing of information hit the workplace. And so there is this generation that's going to go out there into an information society with trillions and trillions of gigabits of information that's out there, that is now being shaped and offered to them as intelligence. So I think search in many, many ways changed the dynamics and landscape of talent and who did well and who did not so well at work. And AI is going to take that to the next level. So I think if it's very difficult to say too much about this, excepting to say that it is going to significantly alter the workplace as we know it today. And this workplace as we know today was significantly altered from what we knew yesterday. So this is going to be a very, very deep, almost, I mean, I hate to use the word disruptive because it's such a cliche, but it's going to be an extremely deep change in the workflows, and the concept of talent and skills at work is going to again take an absolute, is going to be reimagined in ways again that we cannot today understand. I can only say that, look, and I visit colleges and universities all the time. I always tell students, don't underestimate the power of AI on how you will work and how you will succeed or fail. But don't overestimate the hyperbole of AI and get threatened by it and see this as a challenge rather than an opportunity. It is an opportunity, but it will require some serious heavy lifting on parts of students who have not really walked this path to be ready and succeed in this, let's say, new AI world.
Thank you, and Commissioner, sir. So, do you want to comment on this?
On the same question or on something else?
Same question.
All right. No, I'd say for young people, the important question to really answer is to be aware of the transformative changes that are happening around you. There is, of course, a generation by generation experience of change. I mean, the world that people my age got into in the working environment at that point of time was already a significantly changed world at that point compared to what, say, a generation earlier had seen. It is the two things that are changing is the pace of change and the depth of change. So it's important to be able to make yourself future-proof for it. I think it's important to therefore keep tabs on what kinds of changes are taking place, but also to get a sense of how change is happening in different geographies. By that I mean, and I'm sure our former minister will make that point, the way in which countries are looking to play a role on the AI space is also different. There is no single answer to this, and it's important for us to remember that for the same people who told us that there is only one way of development, that wasn't also always the case. The way we're using AI, for instance, or the way the government is positioning ourselves on AI, is to really focus on user case scenarios rather than just throwing money at building LLMs and saying, okay, let's just build the infrastructure and then figure out what it can be used for. I think the government, the Prime Minister and our ministers, including Minister Chandrasekhar when he was in government, were focused on the idea of saying, let's identify what we can use it for and then build capacity to make that work. So focus on social change. So for all of you, the young cohort that's going back, and I caught a bit of the last session, I think it's important for us to recognize that the way the world is changing here may not necessarily be the way the world is changing back there in India. And your opportunities, your awareness should lead you to also try and figure out which of these changes is more material to your circumstances.
Absolutely. Samir, do you want to comment?
It's hard to follow after two brilliant responses like that, but trying to build on that. When I first became head of the organization, I told my organization, because we're all technologists, I said every 5 years your job is going to change.
Yeah.
And now it's literally every year. So in some sense, it actually gives you the license to be more adventurous. Because you can try something, and if it doesn't work, very quickly there'll be something else that you can try. But don't stick to the classics, think about the creativity. And I'm very proud as an Indian that today, what India is known for, and you've heard it in different flavors and different ways all day today, is that jugaad attitude. We figure things out. So to me, there are massive opportunities today for Indians to be creative. So just to give you an example, I was in some conference recently about doctors and healthcare, and a typical journey of coming up with the idea for a cancer medication and all the way till getting it approved by the FDA is on average 15 years. AI can fast track that massively. Massively, right? So that's where some creative people can say, how can I harness AI to make sure that we design the molecules correctly, or we look at all the different permutations and choose the right one, right? So it does not matter which field you're interested in, you have to be creative about how can I use this. And honestly, I know, as Prachetas rightly said, $1 billion are being spent per day. But what that means is a lot of it is available free to all of you, right? All that horsepower is free. You can tap into it, test your creativity, come up with a solution. If it doesn't work, jump to the next, jump to the next. So you have the license to go forward with it. And sitting in the UN, I can tell you that I can speak for, without mentioning countries, the Euro HPC, for example, the EU has created a consortium, the UK has created their supercomputer, Switzerland has created theirs, and so on. Lots of them are sitting idle. It becomes a vanity project. I won't name countries, but there's one country where I was told by the gentleman who runs it, just electricity alone is 60 million a year. And they don't know what to do with it. So it's a white elephant. So thank you for mentioning it. The Indian government's approach makes perfect sense. First, find the use cases, find the problem statements, and then build enough horsepower to do it. Otherwise, you're building capacity way in excess of what you might potentially need. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
So wonderful point. Now just let's turn our attention to India. So Rajeev, you have said before, I think multiple times, that the next wave of innovation in India is going to come from AI. So describe to us what is that AI reimagined state looks like, and how far are we, how close are we to that vision?
No, I just want to correct you. I said the next wave would come from what I call deep tech.
Okay.
And deep tech is a broader landscape, and it is AI, it's semiconductors, it's the future of compute, electronics, all of that. And I think the reason I said that is I think that is the way the world, that is where the world is moving. AI has taken abstraction to a level which allows you to reimagine pretty much everything that you see today. Compute, what used to be a computer, what it was an operating system, what is the paradigm for compute. All of that will get reimagined with this huge horsepower of compute that's available, these AI clouds and AI data centers. So I said that. Number one. Number two, the reason I said that so confidently, and I believe we are on the track to do that, is that is where the next wave of our entrepreneurs and young innovators are coming and targeting. And you know that the last 6 to 7 years, India's innovation ecosystem has really gone from almost, I don't want to use the word standstill, but let's say from a Maruti 800 to something that resembles a Ferrari. Sorry for the cliche, because I just drove past Silverstone. So look, it's clear to me that the youth in India, the young students, are a lot more confident today, which they weren't a decade ago. They are absolutely gung-ho about failures, risk-taking, and deep tech is a lot about that. So that is one. In terms of the temperament of our entrepreneurial ecosystem has dramatically changed from being tentative, being outliers, following the world, to now believing that they can shape the future of innovation. So that's number one. Number two is the government of India, and I think Vikram mentioned that as well. Most of the policies that our Prime Minister put into place from 2014 onwards has been aimed at enabling success. So a lot of the policies, whether it's for AI, semiconductors, look, for 70, 75 years, India lived with the belief that semiconductors was something that we could never do. And we were told repeatedly by the world and by people within the country that, no, don't go down that road, that's too much for you to bite off. And in just 2 years' time, 2.5 years' time, after policy was announced and funding was granted, we are there with flags planted on pretty much the entire semiconductor ecosystem. So in AI, and just to make this, to finish this answer, the reason I'm confident about AI is because of the DPI success in India. India today sits on repositories of data and therefore data sets that are absolutely worth gold, platinum, and any other alloy that you can think of. So the intelligence that will come out of these data sets training a model, whether it's an expert model or a small language model, or in turn then train somebody else's LLM or be used for inferences and reinforcement learning, will be, in my opinion, a very different ball game from somebody who's sitting and throwing billions of dollars in AI compute and effectively scraping the internet to train those models. So I'm confident that what will come out of our ecosystem, deep tech ecosystem, is a lot more aligned to what will be useful to people, useful to businesses, useful to communities and countries than something that is a large general purpose LLM. And so that direction and those policies that are steering innovators in that direction, I think, is what makes me very confident that the next wave of winners will come this way.
Oh, thank you, Rajiv, for that. So now India's capability, AI capability, is half the picture. Now turning to you, Vikram, the other half is how India positions itself globally. So, I mean, foreign policy is typically is around four power flows. Tech, capital, defense, and narratives. So I want to bring you in and tell us about how is India faring in shaping the global tech narrative.
I think we've consistently done pretty well on the tech narrative piece. If you think about it, maybe we in India don't really actualize that conversation often enough. But the notion of technology being a major deliverer, as it were, of India's salvation has been largely part of our story as a modern nation. This government has been particularly all in on the idea of it, the notion that technology is something we need to double down upon. But look at things we've picked. Each of these is connected with a clear social story. Take the space program. The space program has its roots, and for those of our young people who haven't actually visited it, I strongly urge visits to our space program museums and facilities in Thiruvananthapuram or in Sriharikota or in Bangalore or wherever, Ahmedabad, wherever you find it most easily. It is humbling to see the kind of effort that went in from the early pioneers, from people like Vikram Sarabhai and people like that, where the space program was sort of done in the face of technology restrictions to create something that is A, indigenous, but B, significant value for money. So if you see that and you extrapolate it to today, what we're trying to do in AI, for instance, the idea is exactly that. Let us get social value out of it. Let us maximize the use of technology to tell the Indian story. But let us do it in a way that is actually answering providing local answers to local problems. The DPI piece is a perfect example of that. Today, for instance, and I suppose I shouldn't mention it, but your large rival university north of London has something called the Center for Alternative Finance, and it's at the B School. And the kind of work that they have done, they say that there is no other user case of integration of technology with social need than India's DPI, particularly when it comes to payment solutions. The kind of stuff that's being done there, the data that is generating, this is world leading by an order of magnitude. And so it is, there is a value proposition, there is a technology proposition, and there is a narrative proposition in it. The narrative proposition, to conclude the point, is something we're trying to do, including with partners across the world. The Gates Foundation is one of the partners that is helping scale this up through something called the modular in sort of package of the DPI, which essentially takes the Indian experience, takes out the bits that are confidential for us, offers a modular version to currently about 14 countries, if I recall correctly, are partners for this, for them to use and to leapfrog technology at scale. So if we could do it, if we could use cell phones, and I suppose most of the Indian audience here is too young to remember this, but in the early 2000s when cell phones became a thing in India, they helped people jump from not having landlines to having cell phones, right? And the business case usage out of it came from things like fishermen who could call in and figure out which of the receiving centers were offering the best prices. Earlier, they were held to ransom in the hot weather. Your fish would rot, so you just came and delivered it wherever at whatever price. It changed the democratic sort of discourse. So for us, to conclude that point, technology has always been a disruptor, but we have always surfed on top of that, finding ways in which technology has multiplied India's democratic dividend and a social dividend.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So now just turning our lens to multilateralism, we have Sameer here. So Sameer, tell us from the vantage point of the UNICC, how are emerging economies looking at compute? Are they considering to have sovereign compute or shared compute, or how? So just give us a sense of that.
Certainly. So I think as an Indian who's been outside of India for the last 30 plus years, it's heartening to see the progress India has made. Now, in the multilateral context, I think the UN still has a very strong role to play, irrespective of what the world situation might look like today, as a neutral party. One is a neutral party, so we can present a point of view to all the countries who are looking for example technology or how to build a digital roadmap. A neutral point of view on how do they go on that journey. And in that context, I'll echo what the ambassador just said and what I'm sure you hear all the time. Indian tech stands head and shoulders above everybody else. But sometimes politically, it may not be easy for a bilateral conversation to be had with a country. And that's where I think the UN can come in to say, look, we are neutral, we are able to provide you with all the different points of view, all the different shows show you the pros and cons. And then it's made available through the UN. And not just Indian tech, but broadly, the UN is trying to pivot itself. It's an old beast, 80 years old, and very stodgy. But since last year, from the General Assembly, they came up with a resolution which says, let's help the world build tech, break that digital divide. So in that context, I think what I'm seeing is countries are raising their hands. And again, there's only a finite number of countries, 193. So let's say there are about 100 countries who are willing and open to considering ideas from others. That's the target market that we can go after in the UN and say we can help you on that journey in a neutral way. I'm seeing I have conversation with technology ministers where they want to start from the foundational level. I need connectivity. I need private compute. Could be a private cloud, could be national data centers. And then I need all the classic layers that India has, the ID, the payments, and so on and so forth. So I think countries are very, very receptive to learning from each other through the UN. And when it comes to AI, there's definitely a massive appetite for sovereign AI at this point in time. And that's where what we are working on, for example, is a channel where we make that excess compute that I referred to earlier available to countries from the global majority and make sure that they can tap into it in a secure way. But even in that context, just to close my point, India is front-running this, right? So if India can come up with models where we say we don't need the next big DeepSeek or LLM, but we can find the best use cases and find solutions much more quickly for our problems, we can then train the rest of the world through their sovereign compute access to say we can help build you similar models. So we become kind of the gurus and experts who can go and teach the rest of the world. That's the opportunity I see for India.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question for you. When you think about it, when countries engage bilaterally, obviously they can draw on much more diplomatic leverage. But why do you still think that going through the UN can be mutually beneficial for both?
So, look, one is the way I describe us sometimes, UNICC in this space, in the DPI spaces, I call us as librarians. So we have access to all of the open source code that's been made available by multiple countries, by foundations, open source foundations like Linux Foundation, and any other open source code. So for example, we are building, UNICC is today building national IDs into countries with tech that we have built ourselves. So that cachet of a neutral arbiter is not, you cannot underestimate it. That's point one. Second is we are a neutral ground where we can convene. So sometimes it's very important to be able to bring in private sector along with us. It's important to bring in the academia. So in fact, our capabilities that we're building in AI, we are partnering with Oxford University. We're partnering with the Frugal AI Labs at your sister university. We're partnering with IIT Delhi and IIT Gandhinagar. We're partnering with Columbia and NYU. So we can kind of show that we are bringing in academic point of views from different parts of the world. So then it widens your lens. You start to look at things from many different perspectives, and hopefully that helps the country make the best decision for themselves.
Just to second his point briefly, there are some things on which people will look to bilateral opportunity. But technology, particularly something quite as cutting edge as AI, for instance, to put it bluntly, you would worry about gift horses being offered to you bilaterally. it's much better to have somebody whom you could look at neutrally and say that this is a common standard kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it delivers more trust in that as well, starting point. Wonderful. So now turning to you, Rajeev, let's explore how India thinks about AI, and I'll ask you a tough question here now. You and I think a lot of people have also mentioned that the Indian government's priority is to leverage AI to improve the delivery of government services in India, right? While the development of foundational AI, the research and development of that is left for the innovation system to take care of. I mean, there are countries like obviously the US, Target, UK, France, and UAE, which are investing heavily in sovereign AI. That's not just for innovation, but also for strategic autonomy and cultural alignment of AI, which I think Alipuri just mentioned before. So, do you think taking a hands-off approach here, which is more vectored around AI services and the application space, should that be a foreseeable risk for India?
So, Prashant, I just want to weigh in on something that Vikram said. I'm just adding a layer to it. One of the things that the India experience has done in the last 10 years, and I think this is not understood enough or not spoken about enough, is that we have lowered the threshold on digitization of economies. Entire economies can be now digitalized at a fraction of the cost that they would have had to pay otherwise pre-2014. And the narrative that technology was somehow an exclusive club has been turned on its head, and we have actually demonstrated how technology is inclusive. So he made the point about social impact, and effectively the India case study is a case study for all countries, and that is why this real clamor to follow India's lead is because we've turned that narrative on its head that this is some exclusive club of the Western democracies with large balance sheets that can invest in. So I just wanted to make that point. But in some ways, that point is what I want to take into this conversation, this point about AI that you asked. Look, nobody set out to do sovereign AI. Let me just bust that bubble straight away. Sam Altman was not the US government, nor was Elon Musk, nor was anybody else. So it just turns out that because of the way the US moved ahead, and then post President Trump, this effort at making AI and proprietary AI the way to go is caused a reaction, a response for all other countries with ambitions in technology and innovation to say, no, we don't want to just depend on one model. And that is why this need for sovereign AI has developed. It has been a reflex to what I believe is a misguided approach by the Americans to say that we will control the future of AI. And I must say that that is slowly unraveling because of the push for open source AI by countries like India and, funnily enough, partnered by countries like China. So I just want to make that point. The government of India's the approach has been extremely consistent. Our Prime Minister from 2015 when he launched Digital India, he said, I'm not interested in understanding how many research papers are written, how many billionaires are minted. I'm interested in technology being created, deployed, innovation being, the ecosystem being expanded, where underlying digital economy grows, there are more opportunities for our youngsters, and most importantly, it allows the government to deliver governance in a better way, more effectively, more with greater efficacy. Now, if you extrapolate that thinking, that thread, that philosophy, with AI, what the government is doing exactly the same, which is that we want to use the data sets, we want to use all of this knowledge that we have via the DPI to create expert models. You can call it use cases, but given that the language around AI models tends to be sophisticated, I'm using the word expert models. Expert models in healthcare, expert models in agriculture, expert models in sustainable development, expert models in disaster prediction, in terms of with the context of sustainability, etc. So our approach is that because this is a extremely wise way to do it, because at the other side of this, lives are going to be positively impacted. The economy is going to see outcomes out of this investment. And the government's approach is we don't want to get into the business of being the innovator, but we will create the policy ecosystem and the policy framework, including allowing building AI compute capacity, funding startups, funding those who are building these expert models and use cases, funding research, and being, in a sense, the cheerleader for this journey. And I think this is the right way to do it. Look, the Chinese have a very different model, and the state there does everything. And certainly the Indian model, and I recommend this Anu Bradford's book on digital empires as a must reading for anybody who's interested in the subject. Our model is a hybrid between the Americans and the European model, which is, yes, we do want regulation to prevent harm and all of the other bad things that technology delivers, and we don't want to leave it to the markets, but at the same time, we don't want to be in the face, in the lives of innovators, but we'd rather be government. I should stop saying we, but the government would rather be the enabler of this innovation ecosystem.
So, also, am I right to conclude, Rajeev, from what you just said, that India does not aspire to have its own DeepSeek moment, a general purpose open source model, but a more functional, laser focused small models that are connected together?
Look, there obviously in the AI discourse, there are these people, and I've had the good fortune of meeting all of the so-called celebs in this space who are talking up AI and LLMs. Okay, and I think DeepSeek is a wake-up call to everybody who thought that only the Americans and billions of dollars can do it. Right? It's proved that a few $1 billion and non-Americans can do it. So that is a wake-up call. But I do believe that there is a very, very separate approach developing, which is about creating these smaller, brighter, better trained, expert, narrowly focused models, which is what India is focused on. And if you read the latest Apple research paper, which has really demolished LLMs and what they claim to be, roadmaps and stairways to AGI, they are not. What they are doing is scraping the internet and approximating many things that they pick up from the internet and deliver something that is called general knowledge, not AGI, but very general pattern matching type of knowledge. So I think our approach will be different. At the same time, the government of India is looking at backing some LLMs which are Indic language driven, scraping the... so either way, we come out having expert models that will deliver some really focused, capable and accurate capability in AI. And we are not in the rat race for ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Meta's Llama versus DeepSeek. Let them duke it out while we solve the world's real problems.
Thank you for that, Rajeev. Now let's stay with the idea of strategic alignment and see how India is approaching tech partnerships. So this is a question for you, Vikram. The UK-India Tech Security Initiative, which is overseen by National Security Advisors of both countries, it elevates tech, that's semiconductors, AI and telecom, to a pillar of national security and economic diplomacy. That's not the easiest to find everywhere, but I see it's a wonderful initiative. So my question to you is, why has tech now become one foundational pillar of national security between UK and India foreign policy?
So tech has always been a foundational pillar of national security policy for India. So that part I think we should be clear in our minds about. It is the quest for technology, the quest for capacity to find suitable partners who would help us bridge bits of our technology, whether it was cryogenic engines for our space program, whether it was access to supercompute capability. Each of these has been part of our diplomatic or, if you will, national security outreach efforts. So put that in one place. I think vis-a-vis the UK, the opportunity was really one of the things the PM essentially put out as part of his vision for the relationship. It's taken a long while for this rest of the system to follow, the relationship to the UK, I mean, which is that we should really be looking at the UK, and the UK should be looking at us in a more forward-looking, modern relationship. There is, of course, a long history to our relationship, not all of it fully pleasant, but there is no reason why we should spend our time walking forwards while looking back. So the Technology Security Initiative is an effort to put technology partnerships, link universities, regulators and businesses on 7 particular critical pillars of technology, where both countries have certain well-recognized areas of leading competence, and see if we can't through that partnership identify totemic or iconic, as you will, projects that could come out of it, where we could jointly do research, co-innovate, and eventually bring new products to market. This could be in telecom, it could be in AI, and it could be in cybersecurity, advanced materials, strategic minerals, or even in life sciences products. And we've had bits of this where it has worked. I mean, COVID may not have been the happiest period for the entire planet, but the fact was that the AstraZeneca vaccine, which 3 billion doses of it were made in 27 different manufacturing sites, of which one site alone produced nearly 80% of it. So that is, the TSI speaks to this advantage.
I just want to add one point, if you don't mind. Look, the answer to that question is very simple. The digital economy, the innovation economy, the world over is growing at 3-4 times the traditional economy. So everybody wants a piece of it, and therefore, if you don't have these partnerships, everybody loses. These are strategic partnerships that are absolutely economic in nature. It's national security, but national security to protect the growth of the economy. There is an underlying economic rationale for these partnerships that are very, very compelling and strong.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you for that. Now, let's just also, we are a little short on time, so let's just turn our attention to risks of AI. A lot of people speak about that. So AI is already shaping propaganda, faster than diplomacy can respond. You have real-time disinformation, synthetic propaganda around. So my question again to you, Vikram, is how do you think Indian foreign policy must adapt in this informational battleground where you can't trust a lot what you see?
So that, of course, is a major challenge today, and it's not just Indian foreign policy; it's all of us. It's long been said that by the time the truth gets its boots on, a lie has gone halfway around the world. Today, it's even faster. Social media being the particular vector that spreads it, and you only need to look at stuff a couple of months ago in our regional context to see how many lies got out first. But the larger part of this conversation really ought to be about being accurate, being consistent, and being in a sense precise with what you put out. As long as you can do that, you are quite able to fairly quickly dismantle propaganda and lies. The thing is, we shouldn't forget that some of it sticks. Of course, as they say, if you throw enough garbage out there, some of it is going to stick on your window. But some of it sticks because there is also a growing tendency to the what you might call the Marvel comicsization of our world. And I think Rajeev mentioned this in a sense. I mean, he didn't use those specific words. Those are my fault entirely for anybody who's offended by it. But the idea that all we're looking for is champions, right? Everybody's looking for some new wonder sort of thing that will come out. This is world beating this particular piece of technology, and it's there in warfare too. Everybody says this is some new Wunderwaffe kind of thing that's come out. Garbage. I mean, the reality is that wars, businesses, or national interests are played on the long term. Nothing gets done just because you watched it on social media or on CNN for a couple of seconds. So I think we should be confident and calm in telling our story. We have good stuff to be able to tell, and we should do it with precision and great attention to detail.
So good point here. One more question we have, AI is now gradually resembling like a global tech cold war between US, China, and many other actors in the constellation. So I think my question is to all of you here: what do you make of the AI order? So I mean, you can call it that. That's emerging, and will there be multiple winners? Is it a zero-sum game, or there'll be some winners and some losers? We can start with you, Rajeev.
Look, my grey hair and my grey beard, I should tell you that I've been around the block for a few decades, and I've seen these tech cycles play out multiple times. I think every new super cycle starts with this delusion on the part of some countries or some companies saying that we can own it all, and this is about us serving the world, and there will be us as the vendor, and there will be all these consumers. And pretty much that gets demolished down the road because there's a smarter, younger, quicker, more responsive innovator that comes along. So I think we are at the early stages of this AI super cycle. There's a lot of hubris, there's a lot of delusion, all mixed up with plenty of dollars being thrown at it. But the way I see it, this will play out exactly the way the compute super cycle played out, the social media super cycle played out, the internet super cycle played out, where it will not be a zero-sum game. There will be many open source AI platforms, AI models that will be available. There will be many innovators that will develop, there will be many innovations that will develop around these multiple models. And the challenge is not going to be about the zero-sum fear of one or two countries having it all. That's not going to be the challenge. The challenge is going to be how do we deal with the question that you posed to Vikram, with all of the other societal and other impacts of AI around which the conversation has yet to really mature and develop. The harms, the issues of what this is going to do to societies, values, principles, family relationships. And I'm not being prudish or I'm not being old-fashioned, but a lot of these conversations are missing as we talk about the future of AI. We talk about innovation, we talk about the next big data center, but there is going to be, in the wake of AI, a lot of issues that we have not had to deal with so far. If you think misinformation in the world of social media was a problem, that is going to look like a walk in the park when you see what's going to happen down the road with AI and all the harms of AI. So I think those are the things that we need to talk about. The zero-sum thing, the train has left the station. DeepSeek, before DeepSeek there was delusion. After DeepSeek there's no more delusion. Before DeepSeek everybody thought it was billions of dollars that differentiated winners and losers. After DeepSeek it's about brains, data sets, innovation, algorithms. Those are going to determine winners and losers, and there's going to be plenty of winners around the world. Don't worry about that.
Wonderful. Sameer, do you want to come in on this point?
Sure, I completely agree with Rajeev. So I was very heartened by what Rajeev said because I think that's the right approach. India has a plan, and we should follow through on that plan, not react to every shifting wind. Right? I sit in Europe, and I was at a conference a few months ago, and all these European CIOs are freaking out. I've heard there's a kill switch in the LLMs, and the US will control it, and all of a sudden they're out frantically trying to build their own LLMs. So it's like every time you hear a rumor, and it could, it could be the fake news we just spoke about, right? So you cannot have a national strategy be driven by that, or to say they're doing it, so now I need to follow them. Oh, now they're doing it, let me jump there and start doing that. So I think we need to have a steady course, and I love the point Rajeev made about we should have a mission very clear. How can this help society? How can this benefit the country? And I think that's the kind of principles, and kind of tying into your conversation about the UK, we need to build coalitions where we need to show other countries there's a different way to approach this. We are doing it, come join with us. Then we become the leaders automatically in this point of view to say we are not going to be swayed by every wave that comes and hits at us. We are going to take a steady course, come join with us, and we create a brand new coalition of like-minded, I hate to say it, countries, who work with us. And I think that's the way to show moral leadership in these times. So I think it's not a zero-sum game. There will be winners and losers, but what I've seen with the whole DPI story, I know we've spoken about it a few times, is we are showing there's a new path to take. And I think we should stick to that because that's a winner.
Wonderful. Vikram, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think there is a clear point here, which is that good sense lies in following your own priorities, and that I think India has done fairly consistently on a number of counts. whether it was defense strategies or foreign policy priorities, and today, of course, with technology. Consider for a moment the following. Our national AI mission has broadly, and subject to, of course, what our former minister will correct on that, three broad pillars as I understood it. One was around the idea that depending on where we're looking at putting in emphasis, government funds would go to back that up. So that's around whatever compute capabilities we might need. The second was to be able to, as we already talked about, user case scenarios and how these can actually drive social change. And the third is really about looking at data and trying to figure out how best we can manage this, as again Rajeev said, this enormously valuable resource that we have. For us, our primary focus really needs to be, therefore, how do you actually make data interoperable? So you have these vast pools of data that we've collected, say, in agriculture, in healthcare, in engineering, defense, payments. How do you actually make this interoperable? That's a much more important question for us today than trying to figure out if we can come up with some blazingly fast new AI product. It's not relevant for us. Today, if you see, people are asking the question, everybody else is in the AI race, where is India? Which is the race? The point is, you don't run somebody else's race. It's a really bad idea to do that. The priority for us should be to see what is the level of use of AI tools in India. And if you look at that metric, we're doing extraordinarily well. We're right up there with our Asian partners and our Western partners. There's nobody who's, in fact, we're probably ahead of many of the others. So I think the focus really needs to be on what we need to get done and on our terms.
A wonderful point. Now we'll come to another question on AI diplomats. It's a word I coined, but it's entirely possible somebody else has also used it. So it's a question for all of you. India's diaspora literally sits in every major AI institution, AI lab, DeepMind, OpenAI, Perplexity. So what are your suggestions, and I'll start with you, Vikram, first, that how can they be not just builders of tech, but India's AI diplomats? To create a more equitable AI world order, if you may call it.
I think it would be a little unfair to put the burden of responsibility on on doing something for, this whole idea that you must, because your ancestors came from India, you somehow have a special obligation no matter what. Seems a bit unfair. Of course, it's great if they can contribute in some way back to India, and I think the previous speaker, Ms. Puri, made the point specifically that there is a tide of that already happening. And it's visible in government, it's visible in politics, and of course in business and technology. But the notion that somehow we must task the diaspora to do that seems a bit unfair. It also exposes them quite seriously to the question of, the charge of divided loyalties. Are you working for my company, or are you working for the government of India? And that's not a great thing to try and ask them to do. That said, there is a place where some of this can be useful, and I think someone like Samir, for instance, look at his career. His ability to be helpful to the larger narrative in a way that is not in conflict with his responsibilities and his business sort of parameters is quite enough. We in India will be happy to take anybody who has ideas and suggestions and proposals to give us. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to draw them in somehow into the tent all the time.
Absolutely. Rajeev, do you want to comment on this?
No, I have nothing to add to what Vikram said. I think that is correct. But certainly there is an opportunity for, like I said, these other pillars around AI, the conversations that have really not started yet, or they are not mature enough, or they are lagging behind the hyperbole of innovation. For many of these entrepreneurs who've actually built these, who understand the value of open source, they understand the value of inclusion, for them to be part of a conversation about the future of AI, along the values and along the pillars that we are talking about, which should be safe, it should be trusted, it should be open source, it should be available and accessible by everybody. Those are values I believe most people will be happy to participate in. Of course, look, if you're an entrepreneur, and I was an entrepreneur once, I was a young entrepreneur once, when you take billions of dollars from an investor and then you are told, look, start talking about open source when your entire mandate from your investors is do as proprietary a technology as possible. I think those are some contradictions that you'll find are not easy to resolve, I think. But on the broad principles, getting more and more people involved and having this conversation about where India stands on issues of safety, on trust, on inclusion, that is, I think, an effort worth pursuing.
Wonderful. I think we're really short on time, but very quickly, Sameer, do you want to just come in?
Sure. So, look, I have to walk that fine line every day to say, am I being true to my job as a UN official? But my job is made easy because Indian tech stands head and shoulders above others. So I can honestly say I'm being a neutral arbiter, but I think Indian tech is valuable in this context. The last point I'll make is I think the template India has followed for creating all of its DPIs of creating ecosystems.
Yeah.
That's something I think the Indian diaspora, especially the students here, that's a new way of imagining where you create win-win scenarios, where you create an ecosystem where you invite partnerships in, and you create a situation where not just you but an entire ecosystem can win, is a model that I think we can hope the Indian diaspora can take forward. And that will be of massive benefit long term. It's following that Indianness. We heard about it earlier today, that our DNA, our history, willingness to do good for the greater community. Those are those are elements I think we can bring into tech.
I think we can.
Just to add up for a particular point, there is a world, of course, in which a number of businesses also are keen that their, if you will, Indian origin employees could be useful in helping build partnerships back in India. So that is a perfectly legitimate way of doing this. Just that we shouldn't add the burden of expectation from our side on it.
Yeah, and we are seeing that in semiconductors, for example.
Absolutely.
A whole bunch of diaspora coming back to India and helping build the semicon ecosystem.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you. What a wonderful discussion. So I'll just invite, I think, Siddharth. Siddharth, you come and you want to give mementos to everyone?
Can I now have Chaz, Ketan and Siddharth on stage for a token of gratitude for the panelists, please?